We live in a scientific age. We launch telescopes into deep space. We measure gravity. We calculate light years. And yet, every time we look up at the night sky, we speak the names of ancient gods. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, even our own world. Terra, our moon, Luna, our star, Sol. Somehow, in the middle of physics and astronomy, mythology never left. So tonight, we're going to explore a simple question. Why are the planets named after Roman gods? And along the way, we'll look at the myths, the science, and the history that tied them together. Because it turns out, the story of our solar system is not just scientific, it's surprisingly human and pretty stellar. Before we talk about the planets themselves, there is one celestial body that shaped all of their stories, the sun. In Latin, the sun was called Sol. In Greek mythology, the sun was represented by Helos. Helos was often described as driving a golden chariot across the sky each day, pulling the sun from horizon to horizon. Every morning he rose from the eastern ocean. Every evening he descended into the west. Ancient people imagined this daily journey as a divine cycle of light. Later, the Roman god Sol became associated with Sol Invictus, meaning the unconquered sun. The sun that could never be defeated. And even today, that name still lives in modern language. Solar system, solar energy, solar eclipse. Our entire planetary system still carries the Latin name for the sun. For ancient cultures, the sun was not just a star, it was life itself. Without the sun, there would be no seasons, no harvest, no warmth. So it is not surprising that civilizations across the world, not just Rome and Greece, built myths around it. And even now, when we understand the sun as a massive sphere of nuclear fusion, we still describe our planetary neighborhood with the same ancient word, the solar system, a scientific term with mythological roots. In other words, the sun has been the center of attention for a very long time. Before telescopes existed, ancient sky watchers noticed something strange. Most stars stayed fixed, night after night, year after year. The constellations stayed in the same patterns, but 5 lights behaved differently. They moved. They drifted slowly across the sky. To the ancient Greeks, these objects were called planets, meaning wanderers. These wandering lights fascinated ancient civilizations. The Greeks associated them with their gods. Later, the Romans adopted Greek mythology and gave the gods Latin names. That is why our planets today have Roman names, even though the mythology behind them often comes from Greek tradition. But one world stands apart from the rest, our own. Earth is the only planet whose English name does not come from Roman mythology. The word earth comes from Old English and Germanic roots meaning soil, ground, land beneath our feet. But in Latin, earth was associated with terra, and in Greek mythology, she was Gaia. Gaia was not simply a goddess, she was the earth itself, the primordial mother from whom all life emerged. From Gaia came the mountains, the seas, and the sky. But the reason Earth wasn't named like the other planets is simple. Ancient people didn't consider it a planet. Because Earth didn't wander, it was believed to be the center. For centuries, people believed the heavens revolved around Earth, not because they thought humans were divine, but because they did not know yet how vast the universe truly was. Then, in the 1500s, Nicholas Copernicus proposed something radical. Earth was not the center, we were orbiting the sun. Later, Galilei observed Jupiter's moons, and Johannes Kepler described planetary motion mathematically. The sky did not change, our understanding did. The shift from a geocentric universe to a heliocentric one was not just astronomical, it was psychological. The closest planet to the sun is Mercury, and it moves incredibly fast across the sky. The Romans named it after Mercury. Mercury was the messenger of the gods. In Greek mythology, he was known as Hermes. He wore winged sandals and carried messages between worlds. He was clever, quick, and sometimes mischievous. He was also the protector of travelers, merchants, and communication. Even modern words like commerce, merchant, and mercantile trace their roots back to Mercury. The name reflected what ancient astronomers saw, a planet that raced across the sky, faster than any other. Fast, elusive, difficult to observe, just like the messenger himself. Venus, beauty and illusion. Venus is the brightest planet visible from Earth and often appears as sunrise or sunset. It often appears at sunrise or sunset. Because of its brilliance, the Romans named it after Venus. In Greek myth, she was Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, attraction, and desire. According to legend, Venus was born from sea foam and rose from the ocean fully formed. Artists across centuries have painted her as the embodiment of beauty. But Venus, the planet, hides a different reality. Beneath its clouds are crushing atmospheric pressure, volcanic landscapes, and temperatures hot enough to melt lead, which raises an interesting thought. What looks beautiful from a distance, but burns when approached? Sometimes mythology reflects deeper truths than we realize. Mars, the red god of war. Mars appears red in the night sky, Ancient observers associated this color with blood, so the Romans named it after Mars. In Greek myth, he was known as Ares. But Mars held a slightly different role in Roman culture. He was not just the god of war, he was also associated with agriculture and protection. The Romans believed Mars guarded their land and their people. Interestingly, the month March was named after Mars. It marked the beginning of the military campaigning season in ancient Rome. War and renewal, conflict and growth, two forces that history often intertwines. Jupiter, king of the gods. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. Massive, dominant, powerful. The Romans named it after Jupiter. In Greek myth, he was Zeus. Jupiter ruled the heavens. He controlled thunder and lightning. His authority represented power, order, and leadership. And interestingly, the planet Jupiter behaves in a similar way. Its immense gravity acts as a kind of cosmic shield. It captures or redirects many asteroids that might otherwise threaten Earth. Sometimes the largest force in a system is not simply dominant, it is protective. Saturn, the god of time. Saturn moves slowly through the sky. Its orbit takes nearly 30 years to complete. The Romans named it after Saturn. In Greek mythology, he was Cronus. Cronus famously devoured his children because he feared being overthrown. The myth symbolized time consuming all things. Everything eventually returns to time. The planet Saturn's rings almost look like boundaries, limits drawn around a world, which raises another question. Is time the destroyer of life, or the structure that gives life meaning? When telescopes improved in the late 1700s and 1800s, astronomers began discovering planets beyond Saturn. Unlike the earlier planets, which had been known for thousands of years, these worlds were entirely new to human history, and for the first time, scientists had to decide, what should these new planets be called? Instead of abandoning mythology, astronomers chose to continue the ancient tradition. They kept naming the planets after figures from classical myth. Uranus, the ancient sky. Uranus was discovered in 1781 by astronomer William Herschel. At first, Herschel suggested naming the planet after the British King George III, but astronomers outside Britain preferred to continue the mythological naming tradition. So the planet was named Uranus, after the ancient Greek god of the sky. In Greek mythology, Uranus was not just a god of the sky. He was the sky itself. He emerged from Gaia, the Earth, and together Gaia and Uranus created the first generation of powerful beings known as the Titans. Among those Titans was Cronus, the god we know as Saturn. But the story takes a darker turn. According to the myth, Uranus feared his own children, so he forced them deep into the earth, imprisoning them within Gaia. Gaia grew furious at the suffering of her children, so she asked the Titans to overthrow their father. Cronus accepted. Using a sickle given to him by Gaia, Cronus defeated Uranus and took control of the cosmos. This myth created the first great shift of power in Greek mythology. Sky, Titans, Olympian gods. In other words, Uranus was the father of Saturn, and Saturn was the father of Jupiter, which means something interesting about the solar system. The planets actually form a kind of mythological family tree. Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. A cosmic lineage written into the names of the planets themselves. The planet Uranus reflects that ancient sky symbolism in an unexpected way. It appears pale, blue, and distant, cold, quiet, almost detached from the rest of the solar system. It also rotates on its side, unlike any other planet, almost as if the sky itself tipped over. A strange world that reminds us how mysterious the outer solar system still is. Neptune, Lord of the Sea. Neptune was discovered in 1846, but unlike most planets, it wasn't first found through observation. Astronomers noticed that the orbit of Uranus behaved strangely. Something unseen seemed to be pulling on it. Using mathematics, two scientists, Urban Leverrier and John Couch Adams, independently predicted that another planet must exist beyond Uranus. When telescopes were pointed to the calculated position, the prediction proved correct. A new planet appeared, one that had been discovered not by wandering observation, but by mathematics. When astronomers looked at the distant world through their telescopes, its color appeared deep blue, so they named it Neptune, after the Roman god of the sea. In Roman mythology, Neptune ruled the oceans. His Greek counterpart was Poseidon. He was one of the three powerful brothers who divided the universe after defeating the Titans. Jupiter ruled the sky, Pluto ruled the underworld, and Neptune ruled the seas. Neptune carried a trident, a three-pronged spear said to control the waters of the earth. With a strike of the trident, he could calm the oceans, or unleash storms powerful enough to shake the land. Sailors both feared and revered him. They believed Neptune controlled the waves, the tides, and the creatures of the deep. Some myths describe him creating horses from sea foam, while others depict him traveling across the ocean in a chariot pulled by mythical sea creatures. The sea itself was seen as mysterious, vast, and unpredictable, and in many ways, the planet Neptune reflects the same character. It is one of the most distant major planets from the Sun. Cold, dark, and far from the warmth of our solar system. Cold, dark, and far from the warmth of our star. Yet its atmosphere is incredibly dynamic, with powerful winds that can exceed 1,200 miles per hour, making them some of the fastest winds in the solar system. A distant blue world, stormy, restless, almost like a cosmic ocean. So when astronomers named the planet Neptune, the connection felt natural, a god of the sea, for a planet that looked like a deep blue world floating in the darkness of space. A distant blue world, stormy, restless, almost like a cosmic ocean floating in space. The ocean has always held a strange place in human imagination. Ancient sailors feared it, philosophers wrote about it, myth makers filled it with gods and monsters. It was vast, unpredictable, and deeper than anyone could fully explore. Even today, we often use the ocean as a metaphor for something else, the hidden depths of the mind, thoughts beneath the surface, emotions moving like tides, storms that rise without warning. Maybe that's why the name Neptune feels so fitting, because the deeper we explore the universe, the more it sometimes reflects something familiar within ourselves. And if Neptune represents the depths of the ocean, the next world discovered would represent something even darker, the underworld itself. Pluto, the hidden god of the underworld. Pluto was discovered in 1930 by the astronomer Clyde Tombaugh at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona. For decades, astronomers had suspected that another distant planet might exist beyond Neptune, so Tombaugh began carefully comparing photographs of the night sky, looking for any object that moved slightly between images. After months of searching, he found it, a faint moving dot, a tiny world at the very edge of the solar system. Cold, distant, hidden in darkness. Soon after the discovery, astronomers needed a name for the new planet. Suggestions came from around the world, but one proposal stood out. An 11-year-old girl in England named Valentina Burney suggested the name Pluto after the Roman god of the underworld. Her reasoning was simple. The planet was extremely far from the sun, dark, remote, almost invisible. much like the mythological realm ruled by Pluto. Astronomers love the suggestion, and in 1930, the name Pluto became official. In Roman mythology, Pluto ruled the underworld, the realm of the dead. But unlike many dark gods in mythology, Pluto was not considered evil. He was a ruler of balance, where Jupiter ruled the sky and Neptune ruled the sea. Pluto ruled what lay beneath the earth. His Greek counterpart was Hades. The underworld in these myths was not necessarily a place of punishment. It was simply the realm where souls went after death. A shadowed world hidden beneath the surface of the living one. One of the most famous myths involving Pluto tells the story of Persephone. Persephone was the daughter of the goddess of harvest, Demeter. According to the myth, Pluto fell in love with Persephone and carried her down into the underworld to become his queen. Demeter searched for her daughter across the earth. In her grief, the crops stopped growing. Winter spread across the land. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother on Earth, and part of the year with Pluto in the underworld. And according to the myth, this cycle explained the changing seasons. When Persephone returned to the surface, spring arrived. When she descended again, winter followed. In mythology, Pluto was associated not just with death, but with hidden wealth. The Romans believed precious metals and gemstones came from beneath the earth, so Pluto was sometimes called the god of hidden riches. In that sense, the world was not only a place of endings, it was also a place of transformation, something buried, something unseen, waiting to emerge again. The planet Pluto reflects the symbolism in an unexpected way. It is extremely distant from the sun. It spends most of its orbit in the cold outer darkness of the solar system, and for decades, it remained one of the most mysterious worlds we knew. In 2026, astronomers reclassified Pluto as a dwarf planet, which sparked debate across the world. Many people felt oddly attached to it, almost as if the smallest, most distant planet had become a kind of underdog. Even in science, Pluto seems to carry a quiet symbolic weight, a hidden world at the edge of our cosmic neighborhood. So here's an interesting question. Did the planets receive their names because ancient people believed the gods lived among the stars? Or did humans simply project their stories onto the sky? When early astronomers saw wandering lights moving across the heavens, they gave them personalities. Speed became a messenger. Brightness became beauty. Red became war. Storms became kings. Deep blue became sea. And distant darkness became the underworld. Were these names scientific or imaginative? Maybe both, because long before telescopes or spacecraft, mythology was humanity's first attempt to explain the universe. If astronomers discovered a new planet tomorrow, would we name it? What would we name it? Would we continue the tradition of mythology? Would we name it after a scientist? Or would we choose something entirely different? Even today, when astronomers named moons, asteroids, and new celestial bodies, many of those names still come from mythology. It seems that even in the age of equations and spacecraft, our imagination still travels with us. Maybe mythology was simply humanity's first language for awe, and science is our newest. Two different ways of describing the same mystery. The sky did not shrink when we discovered it did not revolve around us. It expanded, and so did we. Let's not limit them.